Welcome to Abridged, a podcast on everything Bracebridge, with your host, me, Mayor Rick Maloney. Well, I'm joined on this episode of Abridged with a good friend of mine who I've known for a long time, Dr. Neil Hutchinson. Neil, you are a director with the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed.
That's
Welcome.
Correct. Good to be here.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the watershed, Friends of Muskoka Watershed, but we're also going to spend some time talking about a program that is really relative to what's happening right now with our weather. It's the Salty Muskoka program that the Friends have been working on diligently for the last few years. First of all, tell me a little bit about the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed. What do you do? What are you? We've all heard of the Muskoka Watershed Council, but you're not the Muskoka Watershed Council. You're something different.
Yeah, I was involved in the formation of the Muskoka Watershed Council some 20 or more years ago. It was set up to get the public engaged in managing our watershed, to work with the district to advance policies for better watershed protection and advance knowledge. I think the biggest project that the Muskoka Watershed Council does is every 5 years we do our watershed report card, where we choose 10 or 12 issues that can be measured and report on how the watershed is dealing with current threats. And then we put that out. And then, of course, for the last 3 or 4 years, Peter Sale has been arranging weekly columns in the Muskoka region, where various Watershed Council members write about our articles of concern. Friends of Muskoka Watershed was put together by Dr. Norm Yan, and it was really to specifically address and do something about problems, not just identify them, but to find local problems that could be addressed locally that weren't being addressed by other government parties, such as the first one, of course, was the loss of calcium from our forests from decades of acid rain. Even though we've solved the emissions problem with acid rain, the legacy problem of what was leached out of the soil remains. And so we've been collecting wood ash and working with Trent University to experiment on replacing the calcium. The second one, of course, is road salt, where we became concerned in the last 10 years about the toxicity of the runoff from the road salt that we put on our roads to our local aquatic life and to vegetation and to our pets and to our cars and our infrastructure. And so we're working directly to try to reduce that in measurable ways. Well,
a couple of projects that have been very visible if you follow the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed on any of your social media channels. Of course, this past weekend you had an ash drive.
Yes.
The ash is collected by folks that burn wood. You save your ash. You're provided a metal container for your ash. And then every couple of months there's an ash drive where you can go to the Rosewarne landfill and drop off your ash. Third
Saturday of every month from November through to April, Rick. We have the ash drive, and we'd like to have domestic wood ash. We don't want construction ash. We don't like where people have burnt their old construction waste outside. We have a magnet that pulls all kinds of metal out from some samples. So we want the good clean samples that people have been burning inside.
Yes, and I as a regular ash donator, I guess, up to the point now that we moved into town and don't have a wood fireplace, but it's amazing how much ash you do get, and that is used in the program that I know you have a sample for us where you've been kind of doing a control.
Out at Camp Big Canoe.
Yeah.
We've got the sample plots set up where scientists from Trent University are looking at the response of new vegetation and old vegetation to supplementing calcium.
Yeah. So if you are a wood burner, make sure that you're reaching out to the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed and see how you can be involved with the ASH program. I'm sure it's been hundreds and hundreds of volunteers and donators.
Thousands of donations, yes.
Wow, it's amazing.
I'm trying to remember. We're up, I think, close to 60 tons over 5 years.
Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the results. I think talking to Dr. Norman Yan, there are results that are being seen with the impact of the ash.
Yes, and not just results for your eyes. Working with scientists, these results are published in the primary scientific literature, so they've withstood scrutiny. They are valid results, and they're showing the uptake of the calcium into the vegetation. And over the longer term, we're hoping to actually look at the strength of the forests. Doug Clark, our director, is also CEO at Camp Big Canoe. His own observations are that the areas that we've treated at Camp Big Canoe came through last year's ice storm better than the ones that weren't. His own observations is the trees seem to be not not as many saplings brought down in the treated areas.
More resilient trees.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And so anyway, great work that is happening with the ash project. We wanted to spend a good chunk of today talking about something that's really kind of relative to what we're into right now, and that's kind of I guess we're past the dreads of winter. We're getting close to the spring, but it's road salt and the use of salt. And I know that the Friends have a great program, Salty Muskoka. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, the identified problem and challenge, and then we'll talk a bit about what Friends of Muskoka Watershed are doing.
Okay. The actual problem became public awareness about 25 years ago when the federal government, Health Canada and Environment Canada, formally declared road salt to be a toxic substance. So that's under the Canada Environmental Protection Act. It's a toxic substance. So that calls for special management. And they urged us to not use it or to use less, recognizing, of course, that there's safety concerns. That's why we use it in the first place. But one of the first outcomes from that is they set a water quality objective. So for the concern was aquatic life because road salt dissolves. It's a non-reactive. Chloride is the toxic component. It's non-reactive, so it doesn't bind to anything. What you put on the road ultimately ends up in fresh water in the local water bodies and runs downstream. So the water was the focus, and so the federal government set a water quality guideline, it's called, for chloride, the toxic component, which is an estimate of the maximum concentration that the most sensitive aquatic life can carry out its whole life cycle in. And they do this by putting together 30 or 40 studies of toxicity of road salt. And so they came up with an estimate of 120 parts per million of chloride was what they thought would be a safe level. What they did, however, was the studies looked at a wide range of waters across the country. What we have in Muskoka are very soft waters. Again, very little calcium in them by virtue of being on the Canadian Shield in thin soils. The lack of calcium makes chloride pretty much 10 times as toxic.
Wow.
And so we think that a safer level in Muskoka, based on studies done at Queen's University and York University, are close to 10 or 20 parts per million milligrams per liter instead of 120. So that raises the sensitivity of our lakes that we have to be quite focused on. So that kind of increases the imperative to reduce how much road salt we're adding in Muskoka. And the best place to start, of course, is personal level. And we've been working with the public to try to let them recognize how little salt you actually need to be effective. You walk around some of the commercial stores in here, I've almost tripped on the huge amounts of road salt. We're collecting a rogues gallery of bad salt applications. And that it's just far in excess of what is needed. And so we want to get rid of the excess, and then we want to find out exactly how much is useful to do that. And we want to identify what sources we can tackle. Are there certain commercial areas or plazas where you can measure the runoff and see, and then see if it responds, if you can get a program to reduce it.
So let's just stop there for a second. A few kind of thoughts or questions. So when the problem was identified, we recognized that, whatever the kind of national standard or established standard was, it was far too high for the unique characteristics of our lake system, Muskoka Watershed. What were we seeing in our lakes that were alarming? Was there a connection to algae blooms and things like that, or
any direct connection we haven't really seen yet? We haven't reached those talks. We're at those sensitive levels in some of our lakes. The aquatic system is somewhat resilient, but it'll be something you'd have to observe by intensive sampling of small invertebrates in the water column, of zooplankton, and we don't really have the resources to do that. The provincial government doesn't monitor them anymore, so we can only look at the chemistry and compare that to what's been observed in the lab. That said, Jevons Lake, which is just downstream of Gravenhurst, you come across around the big corner on Highway 11 going north at Gravenhurst, and you go about a kilometer down to the right there. To the east is Jevons Lake. It's at 110 parts per million. Wow. And then other scientists have taken cores of the sediments in those lakes, and you can reconstruct the environmental history by what's preserved in the sediments from the invertebrates. And they have shown that certain invertebrates have really dropped down in abundance in that lake, certain zooplankton. And so that's kind of a warning of what could happen at the other lakes. And zooplankton, I wish Dr. Yan was here. He can wax so poetic about zooplankton, but they're water fleas in the lakes, and they filter the water. They have little appendages that they wave through the water like fingers and stuff the algae into their digestive tract, and that keeps our waters clear. If they weren't eating the algae, the waters would be less clear. And so we're worried that if enough of this happens, we might start seeing algal blooms in response to the lack of grazing.
I see.
But of course, algal blooms, there's a huge climate signal there of a warming climate that we're also concerned about.
Okay, so there's a lot of, it's not one specific thing, a lot of different factors, but certainly when we talk about the use of salt, road salt, it is a factor that we have some control over.
Yes.
Whereas climate is a bit more challenging, I guess.
We have control. We have control, and we've known about the control for 40 years. We just haven't got the will.
Yeah. Okay. I guess. Put that in context for sure. It's something though that we can, when we talk about road salt, something that you and I and anyone can have some impact directly by what we do and what we don't do.
Exactly, and that's the purpose of Salty Muskoka. The federal government has helped us with a grant to get out and educate people, communicate. Our scientist Alicia Breckenridge is out doing work with schools and with businesses and the general public to show them how little salt you actually need.
Well, let's talk about that. How much salt? Because not unlike you, I'm not going to name any businesses at all, but you've gone to a business and basically it's been like walking on marbles.
Yes.
In terms of the salt that's been
Excellent
done.
analogy. Yeah.
And way more than probably for sure that's been required. So when we talk about the use of salt and its effectiveness, and we know from municipalities and how we maintain our roads that salt only works at a certain temperature and above, and beyond, and below that it has no impact.
Below -10, it doesn't work.
-10, yeah. Absolutely. And we're seeing that in the last little month or so when we had that snowpack, cold weather. Salt was not going to touch that hard pack that was on our roads, right? That is absolutely not going to.
You just had to drive a bit more slowly.
Exactly. That's exactly what has to happen. So tell me a little bit about how much salt we should be using, and I'm talking about me as a homeowner, my driveway, my sidewalk, and how I might be able to kind of manage that a bit better.
Yeah. Well, the first thing to do is think about salt as an ice melter, not as a snow melter. Shovel the snow first.
Yeah.
Don't use salt to get rid of the snow. And then when you're down to the glare ice, that's when you need the salt. And once you're down to there, our estimates are that most of us, myself included, find an empty yogurt container and scoop up the salt from the bag and just sprinkle it willy-nilly. We're suggesting that a 20-ounce cup, like your standard coffee cup or large coffee cup,
pint of beer.
Or a pint of beer. Yeah. Will work for about 10 sidewalk squares, 10 square meters, which is the size of a small driveway, which is quite a bit less than a couple of yogurt tubs. So you sprinkle it carefully and on a thin layer of ice, and that should be sufficient to make you safe.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. And then the other thing is don't really sprinkle it in anticipation. Wait until you have a problem before you use it, because often you think there's going to be a problem and there's not. And that's also important for the public to do. The other thing that I think the benefit of public education is when the public is concerned about this, they'll come and talk to the mayor. They'll come and talk, hopefully, to the MPP. And I think politicians probably get tired of hearing from scientists because we always have bad news for you. But when the public get excited about it, there's more ears to listen and more mouths to raise the issue.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the big benefits of public engagement.
Well, I saw a few of the videos that you've done on you and your team on the use of salt, and one of the really cool examples was I think that you laid out a square on a driveway and used that 12 ounces, 20 ounces of salt, and showed just how much salt you really need. And a matter of fact, I think I read somewhere where the standard square of a sidewalk, you only need about a teaspoon on that square.
A tablespoon.
Tablespoon.
Applied very carefully.
Yeah.
You can't just fling it on. You'd have to make sure it's evenly distributed.
Yeah. So it's all about using salt at the right time for the right purpose, but then also managing the amount you put down. And we think in this world that everything is liability, and I got to make sure that I'm covering my rear end about what I'm doing on my property and whatever, And so, you kind of overdo it, I guess. And I think that's maybe what we're seeing in some of the commercial properties. Is that?
That's it exactly. That's a direct quote. I talked to the owner of the staff at a store in town, and showed how much salt there is. He says, we have said that dozens of times, but the contractor says I have to put this much on because I'm worried about liability. Somebody will trip and fall. And we've actually gone looking for how many successful cases there's been where somebody's sued, and it turns out that most cases don't even go through. They just settle out of court to save money, but that's still a liability threat. And the contractors are very concerned about their insurance rates going up. So we've been working with the Ontario, there's a group called the Ontario Salt Pollution Coalition that have been working with Landscape Ontario to try to get some liability protection, wherein if you follow prescribed methods and you can demonstrate that you've followed the prescribed methods, you are insulated from a liability claim. Our former MPP, Norm Miller, had the statute of limitations reduced from years to months on liability claims from salt when he was in office. It was one step forward.
Yeah. I think that when you touched on a really interesting point about the, kind of the legislative framework around that would, kind of protect, commercial residents and contractors from liability. I know that the District of Muskoka more recently, this past January, met with ministry officials to talk about, the salt challenge and propose something just like that, where, there was a mechanism by which a contractor or a commercial resident owner could protect themselves by, following a scripted standard of, logging in when they use salt and things like that, making sure that they were, documenting all that information. And I think that's really, really key, right?
Yeah, and knowing the dose to apply
and
when to apply it is very, very important. And the model that we're working from is from the state of New Hampshire in the United States, which have smart about salt certification for their contractors. If they're certified and can demonstrate through their logbooks that they follow the certification requirements, they are insulated from liability. So we're trying to see how successful that model has been.
It's kind of like taking a page right out of the way that municipalities manage their roads, and particularly in winter control. There's minimum standards that municipalities must maintain, and you're proving that you've maintained that minimum standard, and that protects you from. It doesn't protect you from anyone suing you or whatever, but it does protect you from, the courts finding you at fault for anything, because you've maintained that minimum standard established by the province.
And the minimum standards we found are not based on how much salt is applied. It's based on maintaining a clear piece of pavement. Right. And there's recommended doses to achieve that, but the objective is not prescriptive. It's comes out in the outcome. Is what does it take to keep that road clear within so many hours of a snowstorm?
Have you've kind of discovered any kind of alternatives to salt? Is there, when we talk about the application is one thing, and there's been beet juice and other types of things that have been used as kind of pre-wetting pavement and things like that. Brine is another example that is still salt, but it stays. It doesn't necessarily migrate like rock salt and rolls off into the ditch and whatever it might be.
You've seen that on the roads just like we all have, Rick. Brine is one thing. You're just applying it as a liquid formulation, usually in advance of freezing as a prevention. The other thing that we're seeing is pickled sand, which is we put sand down, but 3 to 5% road salt mixed with in a sand mixture by weight, and then you have this. The sand stays put; it doesn't dissolve and run off the road between applications. The salt helps get the melting started, and the sand keeps the traction there. Other things like beet juice have been shown to be almost as toxic as road salt in the end. Beet juice is organic. When it runs into a stream, it's going to be degraded by bacteria, and that's going to suck oxygen out of the water. So some things, just because they're different, aren't necessarily effective.
Better. Exactly. Yeah.
One of the other really good things I'd like to say, and this is compliments to the town of Bracebridge, is on the road where I live, last fall, a little weather station went up with a camera that's pointing at the pavement and a little weather station that says Town of Bracebridge. Now, I was told by James Steele at the district that this can feed right into the plow operator's phone. He can phone up and say, what's the snow doing on such and such a road, and not just go there and not go there until he has to. And so I was told there's about 20 of these set up around Bracebridge.
Yeah. It's a great way taking advantage of technology to kind of monitor where we're at, right, and what we need to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's a really kind of cool piece of infrastructure for sure. One of the things that always shouldn't be surprised is the keen interest in community volunteers with the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed, and the work that they're doing. I think you call them volunteer community scientists.
Yes, or citizen scientists.
Citizen scientists. And their involvement in helping to monitor lake quality and also on the education piece, what they might be doing on the education piece as well.
Citizen scientists, you mentioned lake water quality. Lake water quality is very well done by the district. Take their spring sample on 200 some odd lakes every year. That's sufficient to understand what's going on in the lakes. What the community scientists are doing is looking for sources, looking for storm drains, and looking for runoff down roads and such stuff that there's so much of it. It's not cost effective to get out there and have the district or scientist sample it, but we can give them conductivity pens. Conductivity is just a measure of how much electricity flows through water, and the more ions dissolve, the more salt dissolved, the higher the conductivity. So it's a very good surrogate for road salt. We can take a conductivity reading and divide it by 4, and that's a pretty good approximation of how much chloride is in the water in our local watersheds. So we've had citizen scientists on Beaver Creek coming down from the Covered Bridge subdivision, and between citizen scientists measuring upstream and downstream, the conductivity doubles.
Wow.
And it's getting the runoff from all of our balls, flats, plazas. All of those come into storm drains that come into Beaver Creek and double its chloride concentration over about a 2-kilometer distance. And we learned that through citizen scientists, very, very dedicated citizen scientists. We have some citizen scientists in Gravenhurst who are measuring the runoff from some of the big commercial areas there. And this helps us pinpoint where is the best place to go talk to people to reduce the amounts. Where is it highest? And again, a citizen scientist can look out their window in the morning and run out and measure something instead of getting in a car and driving around all day measuring things. We can get far more data more quickly and more cost effectively. And last year about this time, we published a report on our 600 some odd citizen scientist measurements at 28 sites across Muskoka, showing where the hot spots are.
And so where are we at now? Are we getting kind of the data is telling us how bad the problem is? Is the data telling us that we're moving the needle in the right direction?
Too soon to tell if we're moving in the right direction. We don't have any indications from the district's data set of decreasing chloride in any of our lakes.
Okay.
All the trends we've seen are, if there's a trend, it's upwards. It's not downwards yet. We've only just begun.
Yeah.
And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to initiate a Salty Muskoka 2 project where we can identify, say, some commercial areas, say the Canadian Tire Plaza in Huntsville, the Balls Flats plazas in Bracebridge, the food plazas in Gravenhurst, and measure them in a before and after situation. So we could just status quo, do what you're doing, and then the next year, let's be really careful about how little salt we apply and see how much we can bring that conductivity down.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal next step from what we've been doing.
Yeah. So as a resident citizen, I'm concerned about salt. We've talked about how I can use less salt on my property, how I can manage that better. One thing we didn't talk about at the end of the season, there could be salt lying on my driveway. There could be salt lying on my sidewalk. What can I do with that?
And it's not just the end of the season, Rick. It's over the course of the winter. It lies there. Scrape it up and reuse it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's there. If once mid-March, maybe April comes, you're not going to need the salt anymore. So pick it up and save it for next year.
So it's absolutely reusable.
Absolutely,
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is there any products out there, you can go to the hardware store and you can see different products that are not, salt. I guess they're chloride based. They're probably even worse, are they?
Well, there's a magnesium chloride, but again, it's the chloride ion that's the toxic ion. So you can say it's not road salt, but there's still a toxic component to it.
So it doesn't really matter what that kind of product is that's melting salt or melting ice. It does have some component that is going to impact our.
And it's kind of a general rule for environmental science. Don't apply large amounts of anything before you know what the impact is going to be. Interesting enough, what I've been using on my driveway, my wife describes as a luge run. It's 100 meters long, steep, and it turns. But I've been using wood ash from my fireplace this year, and it provides grit. It's also on a sunny day. It attracts, it absorbs the sunlight and melts the ice around it. Yeah. You go back to the Arctic expeditions in the 1800s, the ships would be locked into the ice all winter. They would, come June, sprinkle their ash in front of the ships to try to increase the rate of ice melting so they could get sailing again in the 2 months they had before it froze up again.
Well, yeah, what was old is now new again in terms of how we can take care of things like that.
And it replaces the calcium, too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what's on the docket for 2026 with the Friends of the Muskoka Watershed? You've got these two projects. You talked about Salty Muskoka version 2 that you're working on. The ash program continues. Is there anything that's on the calendar that's
It's tempting to take on everything, but of course we're a volunteer group with a very limited budget, and so that really limits what we could look at. There are one project that is concerned is the increasing incidence of algal blooms in Muskoka. The Watershed Council is interested in looking at that too, as we are, trying to find the reasons, is what the combination of factors is. It used to just be too much phosphorus was the problem with algal blooms, and now we're getting algal blooms in lakes that don't really have very much phosphorus at all. So either the way we're measuring it, where we're measuring it, needs to change, or there's other factors that we need to understand. And that's pretty high-level research that I think our role would be perhaps to summarize that and popularize that as it's done. The other question that has always occurred to me is we are measuring some conventional things in 200 some odd lakes in the district. Is what's coming down the Muskoka River? What do we add to it from the headwaters in Algonquin Park down to Bala? And are there any organic substances or microplastics or dry cleaning fluids or human hormones concentrated by sewage plants? Are they actually accumulating, and are they there at levels we should be concerned with? It's fairly a very expensive monitoring to do that, but it's well worth looking into kind of a holistic health assessment. Other methods include collecting minnows that live in a small home range area and looking at their biotic responses to their environment around them. Is other ways, looking at both the chemistry and the biology to see how healthy the watershed is.
Wow, that sounds when you talk about that, how many different factors, when you started talking about microplastics and just human hormone stuff coming out of water treatment plants and all those things, all kinds of things that can impact, and it's really you're really doing like forensic kind of science here in many respects, right? It's almost like one of those crime shows where you're trying to figure out what the cause and effect of something is. And
a crime show is a good analogy. A crime show, you're trying to figure out after the fact. What we'd like to do here is figure out the subtle changes that predict when something more serious might happen. Humans tend to get excited when something serious and dramatic happens, and we tend to ignore subtleties. So, but it's good to get in and look at, are there problems occurring?
So if I want to be, now I've listened and watched this podcast today, and great guest Neil, and I'm excited about being involved. How do I get involved with the Friends of Muskoka Watershed?
We have a website, Friends of Muskoka Watershed. There's places there. You can just click a button to volunteer. I'm sorry I don't have the email address memorized right now, but Alicia or Sandy Lockhart would get in touch and tell you what we could do to help. We're trying to get some citizen scientists, again, looking at runoff from commercial properties, and that's really what our focus would be for now.
And you can take donations as well?
Oh, thank you. Yes, we very much appreciate donations. Yes. And I would add, I've also been involved for 10 years with Georgian Bay Forever, which is a science-based group in Georgian Bay, who run through donations, and they get specific working grants from the government. But the citizens there have really contributed. They have a first-rate science program that's very well funded through citizens, through people that are interested. So it's important to understand the importance of donations.
What I love about the Friends of Muskoka Watershed is absolutely community-based. It is, people within our community whether it's Bracebridge or more broadly Muskoka, that are keenly interested in not just today, but the future of our community. And a big part of that, major part of that, is the environment and the health of our lake. And it's exactly why we live here in Muskoka, right?
That's what makes Bracebridge and Muskoka so special.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you and appreciate the time that you've shared on a couple of really interesting topics. And look forward to having you join me again. And maybe we can bring along Dr. Yan, and we can have a conversation about some of the things that he's working on as well.
That'd be wonderful. Great. It's been really great talking with you, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks
for listening.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And you come the second time, as I said before, you get the complimentary T-shirt.
Right. Okay. All right.
Thanks a lot, Neil.
Thank you, Rick.
That's a wrap on this episode of Abridged. Thanks to my guests for taking the time to join me today. This podcast was produced in the Dr. Ted Joe recording studio at the Colson Family Bracebridge Library. Thanks for listening. And be sure to join me on our next episode where we talk everything Bracebridge.
This podcast was produced by North Star Networks, the guiding light for progressive media.